I have a new assistant. She's not an assistant director, but she's a part-time assistant. And her background, she has a double major in music and psychiatry, and for undergraduate. And I was looking at the list of people who were going to be at this conference, and I said, wow, this is a different audience. I wonder why I'm speaking to this group, because the subject matter is talking about using unconventional layouts and use of space and service models, and this doesn't look like a building group. And Hillary said to me, maybe you weren't their first choice, Pam. And so, whether I am or not, it's good to have someone in the office that keeps you humble. But we are talking about two things that really excite me, and one is change and one is unconventional. And those things I like. I like to look at things differently, and I hope that as a group that you'll realize that the principles I am going to be talking about in conjunction with building and planning a library, but I think the methods are transferable to whatever you're doing. And part of it is that you rethink things, that you look at things through the eyes of your customers, and you make decisions with that in mind as you move along. When we were working on the library, we went through the same process that Sam Passy talked about, that we did go to the community to find out how they would use the library. And this was a little bit harder to elicit than we thought, because it was the use of the library space, not the design of the library. And what City Council wanted us to do was to put up a lot of pictures of libraries or parts of buildings, like a big round stained glass window, because that would have gotten a lot of people excited. But it had, or a fireplace, but it did not have any place in our library. And we had plenty of people in the community and on our staff and on our city council and on our library board that would have liked to design the exterior or interior, but it was a little bit more difficult to pull out how the use of the library would be. We also went through a needs assessment with the present library staff and some past library staffs and the board of directors to find out the things that we wished we had in the library and that we were lacking. And this could be adequate bathrooms, it could be staff space, it could be street signage, things like that. We used the projection of what our population would be. And this became our needs assessment and was really the basis and guide of our library throughout the entire project. And for us, it was about a 5.5-year project to go from having a discussion with the city administrator, with the city council, and saying, I was looking at a letter that I wrote someone and said, I'm not sure how much help I need with you as a library consultant. This was a library consultant in Minnesota, but I would like some help. And that was in May of 2006, and we opened the library in the fall of 2011. So it was a long process to go through it. But we did this document that was our needs assessment and told us, for one thing, we projected the shelving and what we thought our collection would be in 5 years. We projected the space for 30 years, what we thought would be the life of the building. We projected our collection, which we know how fast things are changing, 5 years, and we purchased fixtures based on that 5-year plan. As Juan said, my background was in retailing, and We're going to today work on something that I thought was one of the more helpful exercises that I went through as a retail buyer for Macy's. And at the end of our fiscal year, we had to, each department had to ascertain the profitability of their department. And this profitability was what your raise was dependent on, whether or not you stayed with the company. It was dependent on how much budget you would get the following year, where your position on the floor, the sales floor would be. And this was determined by one, it was the sales that your department had, the gross sales. Then it was, from that, we took the gross sales, then we took the loss from our department, and I hope you see the transfer of this in library. You have your number of patrons, the number of books that are, then you take your loss, the money that you have from things that were damaged through people trying them on, falling on the floor, having a rack roll over them, and theft. Then we, the interesting part to me, if you'll help me, Juan, was that after we got the sales, we had to, we'll go ahead and put this up, we also had to look at the turnover that we did. The department that I bought for 1 year, for example, I had $2 million to spend, but in the ready-to-wear department, I was expected to turn that over at least 3 times. So I would spend that $2 million, sell it, and respend it again, and tried to do it fast enough and profitable enough that I didn't lose money, and turned it as fast as I could. So I was turning at least $6 million instead of just the $2 million. Then the thing that they gave me in the first year I was really surprised was that Macy's decided to charge me rent for the space that I used. And not only did they charge me rent for the space that I used on the floor, but they charged me for the fixtures. And that would be like in here, if Matt was using the tables in here and he used them 4 times a year, he was charged for the tables and chairs. He was charged for the screens. He was charged for the chairs. He was charged for the microphones and the whiteboards and everything else. Well, that's what happened here, and this is what happens in a retail store, and I hope you'll see it in a library. If this is your floor, for example, when you go into a department store, on the first floor, in the middle of the store, do you know what's always there? What department's always in the first floor in the middle of a department store? Cosmetics. They're your most profitable department. And so cosmetics get the space right here, not because we love cosmetics, it's because they're the money maker. They're the biggest money maker in the store. So they get this prime space. Let's say that I'm a sportswear department and I'm right here. And in this instance, this is the door that you walk into from the outside. If I walk into the department right here, this is rugs here, this is a hard surface floor so that you go along. As you come in here, all along here, just as if this was Fifth Avenue, I'm charged storefront, and maybe I'm charged $300 a square foot, or maybe $350 a square foot here, and $300 here, because when you walk into the store, you see the merchandise right here, more than you see it as you move along the department. If I have a cross-section up here, this space becomes more valuable than if I didn't have it. And you can see that if the door's here, this aisle is more profitable than this one. Also, because it's on the right-hand side of the aisle and most people walk in and look to their right, this side is more valuable than this side. In this part of the department, this might only be $200 a square foot, and this might be $50 a square foot. However, if I put a fitting room right here, this space becomes more valuable again. And so I was charged square footage space for all of this department. Then, if I were to have, which for a minute, let's look and see, what do you see when you come into a lot of libraries, particularly public libraries, still some academic libraries too, and maybe you see them in the bookmobile, that you walk in here, and often this space right here, which is your most valuable real estate, is friends of the library that you're selling magazines for 10 cents. You might see your bus brochures that tell you which bus to take. You might see a community bulletin board that's terribly junky, and how much is it used for anything, really, except a fight for space. And it is the most important real estate in your library. And it's one of the, or holds. Is this the best place for holds? Or is there a way that you can still utilize it and make this easy to access for the holds, but that you don't see the holds? Maybe you have something that you can show the holds are right back behind it. So they're still accessible, but you can utilize this space right here. And I am not a believer in bulletin boards. I think if you have June is busting out all over here, I have a real hard time seeing, do you really think that that's going to help you check out more books? And really, I mean, we do that all the time, particularly in children's. And I have a hard time saying, how does that make your merchandise? You might say the top, the best teen mysteries of the 2012. Now that might help move some merchandise, but June is busting out all over here, but you'll see it in libraries. So you go along here, and if you put this type of a fixture in your library, and this is a rectangle, and could you move along this slide? Oh, I've got the clicker. I just got too many things. Okay, this is meant to be a rectangle rack, and you put this here. You might be charged $100 for this, and you're not charged very much for it, because what do you see when this is all full? You don't see here's a round rack. You're charged a little bit more for that, because people like rounds, and this is in library fixtures too, that if your shelf has a rounded corner, the collection's meant, the customer views it as a more expensive and attractive merchandise than if you have square corners. This is what you see in this kind of a rack, and you can't tell what it is. Relatable, what do you see when we do books this way? The spines. And we can add more and see how attractive it is. It's just that same attractiveness in your library when you show all those spines. And we can fill it up with even more things. And we get a lot of things on that shelf, but all we see, we can't tell what it is. Even more, you can get 150 outfits on a round rack. Here, when you start doing face-outs, just like you do face-outs in a library, then you see that you have tables, that you can see the whole front of the garment here. And another thing, do you see what they've done? They have this low, higher, higher. They did do the shoulders here, but they've got it colored. That helps a little bit. But here they've got face out, just like your face out books. then they've gone here, and then if they go here, then because this is so inaccessible, often when they go to the highest one, they'll put a shirt and a tie with it because they know you're not going to reach it. And so those same principles for visibility and for the value of your customer would be here, and they would be in the library the same way. If you have a T-stand, you call them a T-stand or a tiered stand here, that would be where this type of a fixture, happens to be on the wall, but where you can see it. I think there might be one there, I can't tell. But this type of a fixture, you can see what the front of the book is or the front of the item. And if I put it here, when I was at Macy's, if my profitability wasn't very good, and this person's profitability was good, this T-stand got taken away from me and got moved over to the other department. This round rack might get moved over to the other department. And if I didn't do very well at all, this whole department got moved over here, or I got moved over here. And my submittal to you is that we think of our space in the library in the same way, that as you come in here, that you come with a clear, unblocked view, that you be able to see what it is, you be able to see where the bathrooms are, you clean up the clutter that you've got in there, let people know which way you're gonna go, let them know you go into, if you've never been into Target store before, and say you're a small town and you come and you go to a Target store for the first time and you need men's deodorant, you're going to be able to find it because they've made sense of where they are. And I'm not sure that we do that in the libraries, of making sense and make it intuitive for the patron. Okay, thanks. One of the things that we did, I would like you to think your space, and we're going to do that for an exercise a little bit more, that you do the tiering so that you can move up and you get the good sight lines, and you don't put your high racks, you don't put your 72 or 84 racks or your 96 racks right in the front, that you do those in the back, and you do your displays so that your eye goes along like this as you're coming into the library, the bookmobile, whatever you're doing. In this library, this is one way that they did a counter for a help counter. Now, we decided that in our library, we started trying to look at things through the eyes of the customer, and we said, why are we having this person here instead of over here to help the customer? Why do we have this person look busy and be doing schedules and be doing buying and maybe cataloging, and so it looks like an interruption for a person to come up and ask for help. We don't let people, we have no chairs for staff to sit down on the floor. We do not have people behind the desk except to help fill out a library card or something. We have walkie-talkies, we have iPads, and people stand over here to help the customer right here. And I don't know why we hang on to this. It's some security thing. I'm really not sure. Why do we hang on to that? But in our store, in our library, we decided not to. In this library, can we turn down the lights a little bit so that's better? Okay. On here, the person came up and they've got the people behind the counter. In here, this is a library in Minnesota, and you can see how good the sight lines are in this library. In this library, this was a supermarket that they made into a library, one of the best renovations I've seen. And in here, this community has 9 major languages, and they were all about equal. The library director felt like that his library was cluttered and his collections weren't good. He literally weeded half of his library, set up areas that were like jobs and computers world languages, vacation and leisure, which didn't work, and he redid it. And he moved things like the books, the videos, and computers and magazines were all in those areas. As you came up into this library, here was the entrance right here. You came up here, the sight lines are clean. You see the displays here, not a new library. He did do some subtle carpeting, and the carpeting carried you around as you went to the library. The information is right here, but there's no checkout here because people moved to the right. The checkout's over on this side. They didn't have a self-check in this library. And then back here in the back, they had kind of a half wall that said checkout and moved you along up to this area right here. But you went along here and went around the library. His checkouts in this library, this is more of his floor. He's got hard surface floor like a retailer here, and then he moved over into carpeting just like a retail store. Look at all the face outs he's got. And this was 5 years ago. This is what he did, like job and career. This was languages, some computers. The first time I'd seen low bins, I'd seen high bins before. We went to low bins in the children's, and we've doubled our checkouts in picture books. More than half of our picture books are out at a time instead of about 22%. This library didn't have repositioned an old fixture to do face outs on their DVDs. See how much better than if you've got a spine? Isn't this more inviting? This, when you're looking at libraries and trying to decide what to do, look with a clear eye. This library felt like that they needed a quiet room, and so they made a glassed-in room here, and people didn't like it. They felt like they were in a fishbowl. And the interior designer told me that if you add the mullions on it, like they did here, then people are comfortable being in the room, but here they're not comfortable. Little things as you start looking through the eye of enabling your staff to do a better job. This is lot of clutter here, and what kind of things could you do to make the work process better? And sometimes it's something as simple as labeling like that. Sometimes it's buying tables that have wheels on them so that you're setting up conference tables if you've got, that you decide where to spend your dollars. Signage is a bad thing in our libraries, I think. Looking at your signage here, they've done a combination of Dewey, and I think nothing is more frustrating for a patron who is browsing than to walk over and just say $8.90 to $9.20 and not give them an idea of what's on the shelf. We did dump the Dewey, and we're on BISAC, and so our end panels just say things like, it's in alphabetical order, but so it would say cooking, home repair, parenting, pets, if those were our only items. Here, they've done more signage too. Same thing here. They've used the Dewey, and the same thing for college libraries. Is your signing something that will help people, or isn't it? Or are you just doing it because that's the way you've done it? One of our reference librarians said, the reason that I'm going to vote to change over to not using Dewey is because every day I have someone apologize that they don't know how to do Dewey. This was a computer area where they had the tables next to, so you could do, your laptops near the computer area, which was good. This is an academic library. This is Minneapolis Public, and they use their carpet for direction. This is going into the children's room, and they used carpet to direct people throughout their whole library. And there are 5 floors like the Salt Lake Public Library, but the first floor is the same pattern, but the first floor is green, the second floor is red, this third floor is blue, so that you know which floor you're at by the color. This was, as you walk in, it tells some history of the factories and the millwork along the river in Minneapolis. Their ceiling. And this, sometimes you think, oh, I want to have a fireplace, and some libraries do it well, and sometimes you do something and think it's going to be nice, that people are going to be able to sit around your fireplace, and or sure, somebody comes along and glasses it in, and you don't have it, you've kind of lost what you're doing as far as the fireplace. So take those things into consideration. I'm just saying, use your money wisely. Maybe this lighting's good for you, maybe it isn't. Signage that we be able to tell what's going on in our buildings. Doesn't matter whether this happens to say gardening, but see the face outs? And they pulled things by topic. Help people. Do people really care who wrote the book on gardening? Not usually. This one is on humor. This is Seattle Library. Did some homemade signage, but it looks professionally done, and they could switch a lot of face outs, a lot of brochures. This one was so successful, I guess, on the graphic novels. I don't see any books on the shelf, but the signage was good, although it was either really successful or they forgot to put the books out. This one, however, this was in the library before we moved, and this is nonfiction. We were working on merchandising. This is kind of an evolution. We got quite a few face outs and everything, but what in the world is, why did we have Valentine's up? What did the hearts have to do with anything? Do these heart sacks make you want to check out these books on food? This is Anything Library System in Colorado. They don't use Dewey either, but they could have used more face outs. Look at those spines compared to the face outs. This is our old library. See the lovely plastic? It went not only the whole way across trying to keep out the leaks, it went down the hall and down to the city council room. Sometimes we'd see an animal in there too. We're trying, this is kind of interesting though too, of when they did these shelves, look, this is, the shelf ends right here, and this, look at how much light this blocked out by taking that shelf clear up there. This is Telluride, a tiny little library, but look how inviting that is compared to spine outs. This is a bookstore in an airport. A mix that's in our old library. This one, good thing, reach for the stars and read a book, but the books are kind of lost in there. Inexpensive ways to divide your areas. These are all things that we looked at as we were going through. This company, it's in Salt Lake, that makes these panels. The teen area. And this library is in Minneapolis, and this is their packs, their catalogs, and they decided to do all their packs on, they felt like that people were going to start looking at things more on their cell phones, and they've decided to use counter space. Sometimes you haven't got the money and a bench will work. Seattle. And more fixtures for face outs. You work with what you've got. Okay, we can turn the lights on. The idea of this exercise was just to say, to rethink the way that you're doing things, to look at things differently, and as I said, look through eyes of the patrons, look at how you serve people, look at what enables both the customer and you, that it provides learning opportunities, so that if somebody comes in your library and this is what we do in a, okay, if you went into a grocery store and Oreo had just come out and they had Oreo cookies with pink, purple, and yellow frosting, they'd put it on the end panel. They would not think, I have to keep those Oreo cookies over with the Lorna Doones because somebody might go down that shelf and want the Oreos, and they'll be out here on the end panels, so we can't do that. And libraries do that all the time, that we say, do you have historical fiction? My daughter needs a book report. Do you have historical fiction? My son needs a book report. We get it 100 times a month, and we keep it all in by the author, because what if someone comes in and wants Davy Crockett Goes to Washington and they can't find it on the shelf, that it's out on the display, and we miss helping these 200 people thinking, I can't move those books because that person might go on the card catalog and not be able to find it. And so my hope to you is that whether it's in choosing fixtures for your library, in doing technology, in doing a class, that we start thinking of the patron, to teach them, to make life easier for them, and that we go for it and we make it a better experience when they come into our libraries or our bookmobiles or our computer labs, and don't make it a frustrating experience for them. I'm going to have you do an exercise. Do you have any questions before we move on to it? What I'd like you to do is to get into, don't move yet, but I'm going to have you get into groups of 3. I'm going to give you a floor plan here, and it's the library that I work at. It hasn't got, when you get it, I'll tell you where the coordinates are, that what you've got around the library, and I want you to put in the shelves, the meeting rooms, the bathrooms, the offices if it needs it, and seating, computers. The only thing that you have to use are the shelves, because that's a given that you have to use it. And then I'm going to have you share it with other people. So get into groups of 3, set your computers on the floor because you're going to need the table space, and I'll give you the project to work with.
We were operating under the assumption that we did not need a meeting room for whatever reason, or maybe there's other facilities in this small city or whatever. So we did not make a provision for a meeting room. And so what we have the entryway here, the people on counter service desk as they come in, and there are 2 offices behind it and storeroom. And then over here is information, what we have is an information commons, which can be, the people sitting here can facilitate transactions there. We put our main stacks in the middle, the high shelves, and the blue shorter shelves are our children's area. We figured there might be some parents that want to keep an eye on their kids, so we put lots of seating back here. We put a service desk here to ward off the perverts. And the bathrooms were all the way in the back. I'm not saying this is great, but this is what we can offer, right?
In a short amount of time.
Yeah, and then we just have one giant work area for like the processing staff in the back here. And
where's the jacuzzi?
we didn't put
In
the
the work area.
jacuzzi in the work area.
I know Springville's got one.
And then over here in this corner, we've got magazines. We figured people come in, oh, do you have Time magazine? They get directed over here. And these are big windows. They could relax and read or work at the tables here. And then these are the 5-foot shelves. We wanted some of these to be, we wanted to have some display shelves out here, but we didn't have time to write it in. Some open face shelves to kind of draw people in.